It is done. I finally managed to complete God of War Ragnarok, and we're breaking down and deep diving into the taste of open world design that Sony Santa Monica gave us. Hey everyone, I hope you're well, playing and making the games that you all love. You're joining me, your host, Max Pears. Absolute pleasure to be talking with you all today. I hope you're having a great morning, evening, or night whenever you're listening to the show. Just know that I appreciate it and thank you very much for tuning in. So this one is a fun one for me because, as I mentioned, I've just finished that of Ragnarok, and for many of you who know, follow me on Twitter, or have heard me talk in previous episodes, I absolutely was infatuated with God of War 2018. So to be able to play and to complete Ragnarok was great for me. Again, just can't say enough great things about Sony Santa Monica and all the incredible hard-working people there who worked on the game. Congratulations to all of you, if any of the devs are listening, because smashing job, honestly, an incredible game for me, and one that me and my brother have been talking about a lot, which I should leave him alone because he's currently on his honeymoon. So I'm sure my now sister-in-law is not best pleased when she's trying to focus on their time abroad. But it was one that I thought, well, there's so much to it. I'm still debating on how that I'm going to approach doing an episode actually on this topic, whether it be with a guest, whether it be that of how do I say, deep diving into certain just particular aspects or what have you. And there's so much to look at. I think I sank over or just close to 50 hours on it in total. Now, I didn't get all the Ravens, for example, but I did a lot of it. Obviously, did a lot of the end game stuff as well. And I've just been going through and blitzing through loads of interviews with the devs and the director after I've finished it, so it'd be interesting to hear theirs. And one of the elements or areas that he talked about that kind of really fascinated me was the crater, right? I'm sure many of you have played it. It is the kind of like small taste of the open world that Sony Santa Monica gave us in Vanaheim.
But first, let's have a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is none other than me. What I've done, everyone, and I hope you're excited for this, is I've actually created a level design kind of store. What I've done in this store is put up different kinds of tips and tricks that you can find there, whether that be my actual ebook itself, to that of level design pamphlets focused on different things such as traversal, stealth, breaking into the industry, as well as different talks that I have done which you cannot find anywhere else other than on this store. So if you are looking to improve on your level design skills and processes, then check out the Level Design Store, which will be down in the description below, where there'll be a link to find this. All you need to do is head over to gumroad.com/level design lobby. I hope you like what you see, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you, and now back to the show.
And it was one that I was fascinated just coming back to and just talking about. I can't remember. I'm really so because it was mentioned in the IGN Beyond podcast. I'll put a link to that, but it is mentioned. I believe he's the Encounter director who primarily was a level designer by trade, who I believe started this and kind of was his project. So I'm sure that many others that worked alongside, but he kind of led this one. And there's so much to take in, so much to dissect of the actual space itself that I just thought, let's do it, because it is a teaser. It's not a full open world map, but it's the closest thing that we've seen in this universe, right? Like what I mean that is, obviously, someone's going to try to technically correct me. theirs have definitely been more contained versus proper open worlds, and there's a lot of systems you see in play. So we're going to be going through and deep diving into these systems. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first one that I want to tackle and touch upon is the actual core landmark of this, and that's the lightning kind of frozen one that we see in the center of the crater, which we've seen before as Kratos because it's the same effect that was left behind when Kratos and Thor had their fight at the very beginning of the game, right? At first I was confused. I was thinking, man, did Kratos fight Thor before and I just missed it? Thinking that I just somehow managed to miss something, falling asleep at the wheel. I was like, what? Did it go so far that it also echoed out here? And what I thought was fascinating about the choice of the core landmark, right? And the layout's so big. There are other local landmarks and other elements of structure that you see around, but this one is fascinating for a few reasons that we're going to get into. The first element of it is it poses a question, right? From a narrative point of view, it is, how did this get here? What is this about? And I should really state this does have spoilers, so if you haven't played the game, I do recommend leaving now and then coming back once you've played it. So I'll give you just 2 seconds. Okay, well now let's get into spoilers. But it not only piques the curiosity of us, the players, but also in the universe between Atreus and Kratos. Now I know we'll touch on this a little bit later, but I know you can play this with Freya as well, and that will unlock different dialogue and conversations. But I played this with Atreus from this point. And what it ends up being is not only just a landmark, as we talked about, something visually stunning, something to help guide, but it starts to unlock questions that these two characters have been wanting and been asking throughout the entire game. In the previous game, you find out that Kratos' partner and Kratos' mum was a giant, and neither of them knew. And they are plagued, upset in different ways. Atreus not having someone to talk about and learn about being a giant, and Kratos confused to why she kept it a secret and unsure how to raise a giant himself, right? And these are very much lingering, right? And to me, the elements you start to see build around this in terms of the quest, but what you start to see from this is some resolution. You get to understand more about this character, not just from the lightning bolt, but the quest that will tie in with it. And from that was something, some of you will know this as well, but part of the reason that I love the God of War is I relate to it very on a personal level. I lost my mum when I was a child, similar age to Atreus, and me and my dad didn't have a great relationship as a kid, and it was because we were both grieving and trying to figure stuff out, and my dad trying to play two roles, and me trying to figure out what life is like without a key parental figure in it. So you both have questions. And the sad truth is you'll never get answers. But when you start to learn more about these people, it does make you feel a deeper connection for that, whether that's hearing stories from others who knew these people, or from looking at old pictures or visiting places that they once visited. There is some element of understanding and closure behind that. And I don't know what the reason was. I think there's something almost poetic, whether it was intentional or not. You can't get on the island, or I couldn't, whether it was the crater was barren like a desert Sahara, or whether you've got it flooded and back the ecosystem growing again. You couldn't seem to actually get on the platform where the lightning bolt is frozen. And like I said, the poetic element to me is similar to the stories you find from this, is you can only ever get so close, right? You can only ever, just tying on the story of the loss of the mother and that you can, she is gone. You can only ever stay close to it, but you can't ever touch it. You can't ever see them or touch them again. And there's only so much that this can reveal. So physically not being able to mimic that as well felt really good to me. Once I figured out that, hey, this is why it's here, it made more sense, because when I was trying to get closer, I was like, why can't I get close to it? This is super cool. Like, why wouldn't I be able to want to touch this? And who knows why? Like I said, technical issues. I could just be speculating, and as I know in game dev, sometimes things just work for the better by chance, other times they don't. And this could just be something that just worked out for the better in this scenario. And I do just think, again, there's some real cool and clear thoughts and processes behind the choice of this as the global landmark. As we said, it's not just something cool. Its color palette is obviously very contrasting to the desert-like feel barrenness of the crater when you first get there, with that being more of an orange, while this has much more of a baby blue tone to it. So it visually is engaging as well. There's a lot more than just that, and where you are, it looks different. It's so unique visually. There's nothing like it in the map, right? So it's always going to grab your attention. But to have it play such a crucial role in not only the storytelling, but also the pulling the player in from a narrative perspective, is great. I think we've talked about on this channel before how with landmarks, and I've done a talk on this before with I'm forgetting, understanding a world mental map. We talk about landmarks and how important it is for these landmarks not only to just be something visually to help with it, but tying in something else. Like in the Uncharted franchise, a lot of time with these landmarks, you'll see these points where it's constantly pulling Nathan Drake in, that we have to constantly, well, not constantly, but go towards these elements, explore them. And then once we've achieved our objective within that landmark, Nathan Drake destroys that. The cool part when Nathan Drake gets there comes from, we not only see it visually, but we have proper interaction with it. We're able to touch it, move around the space, and once we complete the objective, Nathan not only destroys it, not only does that add some cool drama and tension, some set pieces as well, but it also makes it very clear to the players, this is no longer a focal point. This is no longer needed. It is not something I need to remember because it's gone now. It's destroyed. So to see this tied in from a narrative, and I'm sure there are other games that I'm not even aware of right now that have a similar effect, it's just something, again, just a clear amount of time, thought went into this. So that's the first one we spent a lot of time on already. But the next one I'll talk about is that of the day and night cycle. This here is something that you see in just a lot of open world games, just in general, whether that be GTA, Cyberpunk had it, Division had it, a standard. What you see is it does impact gameplay, but in the way that, you can see it in God of War as well, right? Is that the different types of enemies come out, different types of NPCs, their scheduling. While working on Cyberpunk, and I know they did it on Witcher as well, they had whole schedules for characters. So during the day, they're just going to walk around and chill out. Whatever it is, maybe they go around to collect eggs from the... I say chill out, like in that world, that's definitely not what you do in The Witcher. But what I mean is you may have your daily chores for your NPCs, right? You may have them collecting eggs in the morning, spending time in their houses for the next few hours, and then at night they may not leave at all, but you may have an interesting one which is showing interesting stories where maybe, for example, you see a lad leaving his family home to go sneak off to another house, and you might not be able to see what happens in that house, but if you pay attention, it can create these fascinating stories where players are putting together, oh, maybe they're sneaking off for an affair, right? Things like these that, again, are great ways to tell the stories. Now, as I mentioned, you can see that we're doing similar things. Well, they are doing similar things with different enemies that appear at different times. And I think Draugrs appear during the night, and then you have the more dog-like creatures appearing during the day. But the elements of that is you're in control of it. Right? You can summon when to change night to day, but that then not only expands in the enemies and the challenges that we're pursuing or fighting, but it changes the level as well. Certain elements grow, such as the vegetation to create bridges. Sometimes gates will be unlocked when you make it nighttime, and you get the mechanic a little bit earlier in the other part of Vanaheim. And yet, for them to use that in such a great way that is quite daring in terms of time, like to really get this amount of time to put that in and have impact as it goes all the way through, again, is a lot of work, I would imagine. And not only that, we're talking about like time, but you then have to plot out where each of these, I've forgotten what they're called, but these temples where you get to change the time of day, where they are, so it makes sense, so it's close enough to hear the results or see the results, right? Because they got a very specific animation where you get to see the time. And a lot of the times we talk about this a lot, we've mentioned it through Twitter, is when you have like a lever to unlock a door, you tend to want the player to be looking at the door when you pull the lever so it's clear, okay, the door's unlocked, you go to it. But taking that risk on open world where, as I said, these temples have a very specific animation, so you may not be able to see the area you're unlocking. They play around with audio, I know that, but it can be a challenge for guidance. So getting the points is crucial, so you know what you're trying to unlock along the way. Fascinating to see them do that. And as we said, day and night not only have the traditional gameplay impact, but also has an impact on the overall level. And it's something you have to keep your wits about you as you see a temple going through, trying to figure, okay, well, if it didn't trigger at this time, does it trigger at that time, right? And yeah, I think, again, just another element they've thought about and explored and tried to create a deeper impact and meaning.
At Level Design Lobby, we believe everybody has a story to tell. Hobbyist or student, freelancer or veteran, we made it our mission to unite those who share our passion for creating and developing great games. Thanks to our generous Patreon backers, we've been able to do just that. So if you've already pledged your support, thank you. If not, you too can ensure the future of Level Design Lobby, helping us to create even more exciting content, collaborations, interviews, and much more. With awesome perks and rewards, whether you're a seasoned professional or just getting started, you're sure to find something for you. Want to share tips, tricks, and advice with passionate, like-minded developers? Our awesome community Discord has you covered. Fancy practicing your level design, creating strong portfolio content, and having fun? Then try our level design weekends. Or perhaps you want to individually discuss your work, hone your skills, or level up your career? Then consider our one-on-one mentorships. If you share our vision, then go to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby for more information and to pledge your support. Thank you.
Now, with that one gone, let us go to their side missions, which the ones that I really appreciated was the ones that kept pushing you through the level, right? The Huntress is a really good example of this. There's other examples we'll touch on. You fought against a couple of Huntresses as you go through the game, and they definitely whooped my backside the first time we fought. But what I love about this one is this one feels so dynamic for the player, because you don't just stumble them into a combated area, one that looks clearly designated for combat. You are jumped, you are ambushed by this Huntress, I think 3 to 4 times before you finally find their den. And what I love that is it's kind of brilliant, because when it happens to you, it's normally when you've just discovered a new area. You're like, oh, okay, what's down here? And it shows you, not only are you told, man, this area is not very safe, it's not very suitable for life, but you're experiencing that in this situation, despite you being the god of war, you are still prey. You still are vulnerable to being attacked. That's really, really cool. And I was constantly on my toes, like, God, when are they popping out? What do I have to look out for? And I think there's an element in the creator where you take a zip line down, and they jump to me there. I was like, oh, what? I think that's the second, or might be. It depends how you play. Actually, it might not even be in the order I found. I think it was the second or third time that I ran into them, and what I love that is, as I said, they're in different sections of this open world. So this feels living. This feels more alive. One of the mistakes that I felt we did when working on Division was at one point we tried to make each kind of sub-district have their own sort of mini mission to help sell, but due to time and budget, we weren't able to get them all in time. So instead, like traditional Ubisoft games, you have a checklist of, you will have X these types of events, X those type of events. So while in this of God of War, they cover and cloak it up very strongly, not only in narrative, as you know, you have to hunt, I believe it's 5 dragons in total, maybe 6 across, which the mission's the same, right? Defeat the dragon. But because not only are they cloaked well in the narrative, where it's the narrative tying in the world, where you're constantly hearing, if you do this with Atreus, that the animals are scared. You see these dragons for the most part, or at least the one you do in the main mission, well, in the side quests, and then 2 others that'll fly around, and you have interactions within them in different sub areas where you either are going to be attacked by them or have to shoo them away in order to follow them to their nests. And again, they're really well done, because not only are they tying the narrative in terms of that within the real, well, in the world of the game, but they don't necessarily show it within the UI, such as hunt 5 dragons. You'll see that once you beat them, they'll say you've progressed with it, but it's not shown so blatantly in the comparisons I made with Ubisoft games. And the fact that I mentioned they take place, you have interaction with them around, I think is really well done. I don't necessarily know if there were other levels or games that did this. I know one that I think is really well done as well is the Batman Arkham Knight, because you had other open world missions that would take place on the vehicle level, with that of enforcing the players to use the Batmobile, which was really well done as well. So I think that's great. The fact that it moves through, the narrative ties in so well with the story. There's a lot to love from that. So I really, really did appreciate the effort within that, and constantly making like the world is feeling alive, but also in order to complete these missions, you had to progress, but also, again, making you feel that you're not the strongest thing here. There are other beasts and hunters that will catch you off guard. So great tie-in with gameplay as well. The next one was actually the changing of the level itself. Now, we've not really seen much of that within open worlds. I think the biggest one that, in comparison for this to me, was when World of Warcraft, the DLC Cataclysm, came out. I think it's like the 3rd or the 4th one, where this big, I think it's Ironjaw, the dragon wakes up, and basically all these lands that we once knew as players change drastically forever from this point on, because the awakening of the dragon just changes and reforms the world. Yet they do this live within the game. And some may say that, or feel that it's not that impressive because it's just adding boat and warp. I think there's probably more technical prowess behind it than any of us are even aware of. But just putting even the technical stuff aside for a second, changing how you move through that space with the boat, and how that unlocks different areas now, how that you can now proceed with your other missions, or depending on how you've actually tackled the space, you may not have even realized you've unlocked areas, or you were being halted because of others. To me, again, just such a great way to have an impact on this overall space with progression and changing the movement, changing the flow. So it doesn't just feel the same that we have had, it actually feels different upon your actions. and then makes it feel like re-exploring the areas you've already seen, completely new and exciting as well. And the pacing of this obviously works really well because God of War has they're not the only ones, but they have a great system where when you're traversing, it's a really great moment for the characters to develop and build their camaraderie and hear some interesting backstory, right, while you're moving. So it's a fascinating way to get away with an exposition dump, but also to make the space feel vastly different from gameplay. So that was something that again just blew my mind because at first I was like, God, I can't get to this dragon. What am I not doing? Not realizing if I just, which makes you have to go off to different areas and you don't realize how they connect as well. So it encourages that exploration because the dragon that I was trying to get is locked behind a gate and it doesn't unlock until you actually have the water back into the crater. And the way that I obviously experienced it said, you now have to go off and explore to find, well, how do I do this, not knowing it's on the other side of the crater itself, and just showing how it's all impacted, right? There may be some distance that you have to travel, but again, showing again how important the water is to this whole ecosystem. And I believe when listening to the interview with Eric Williams, the director of this one, he mentioned how this was inspired by a place that him and his wife went to out in Africa, this actual crater there, which all these animals, bar the birds, will live and die in this space, right? And that was fascinating to again see how again real life inspires and it can be taken much further. I do wonder if there's a, for those who may not know, there was a meteor that hit obviously in Africa, hence the crater. I don't know where again. I know Africa is a continent, so it's a big place, but there was one, and Rolex, the watch company, one of the things that they would do would get samples of the meteorite and put it into their watches, right, as a selling point. And now the government, wherever the meteor landed, is now forbidding it simply because it's such a rare material and also kind of a real national landmark for the country, right? So it's a little side topic, but I think it's a fascinating story nonetheless. How people are actually getting away with walking around with a rock from space in their watch, so bizarre. But anyway, back to the point we were going to. Just the inspiration from that, and it's so important. And one of the things that we try to really push on the podcast is how important references and research is when you're creating your levels. How the inspiration you don't even realize can have such a vast impact within other players and other spaces, and twisting that. So I believe one of the big important ones again is gather your references, go see the world. References within games, obviously other mediums inspire us. We have other games that inspire us, but real life does offer so much inspiration and so much power to not only yourself, but a great way to communicate and share with other players as well. So really take a look at that. I think it's just great to hear the story behind that. And yeah, make sure, I don't know if people listening to this, for those who are joining the let's try that again. For those who are joining the CGMA course, one of the things that I don't feel we do enough and well within the course is teaching about the pipeline and references. So if you are taking the course with me this term, then please make sure you gather as much references. And for those who even are not and are building their own levels, make sure that you gather as much references as you can, because it will inspire your work and will make your areas, your levels feel far more authentic and relatable. So yeah, great one overall with that. Yes, now we're going to go on to another topic. There's so many to discuss in this. Honestly, I feel there's a lot in this. So the next topic will be that of the wishing well. This one felt so strange to see in terms of it being in such a desolate land. And also rewarding exploration, but also you looking like you're... One of the weapons you get just before this is the spear itself. and they're these like glowing rocks that you can throw at them, explode, and gather their materials. And if you gather enough, you can put them into the wishing well to gain a lot of different rewards, some ranging from an armor set, other to different crafting materials as well. And what I really liked is you're taking this kind of collectathon, because you don't need to do this, you don't really need to explode it, but it's a fun way to do it. And then rewarding the players with it for those who like to explore as well. For those who are wanting to gain a more deeper experience, then heck, you can there. And the wishing well itself is such a fascinating one. I kind of wish there was more on it in a sense, right? Because you stumble on it, you, like I said, give it these stones, but what another way to show and reward exploration, right? We're not only doing this through XP and crafting materials that we find on our kind of common game loop of combat, right? But now we're having something specific within this space, which again, relating to it as a whole ecosystem, that you're able to find materials only related to that space and then use them to upgrade and obtain new assets. So really smart way for other types of players that really enjoyed these kind of elements as well. I thought it was really nice to see, and just how different that space looked in comparison to all of that of the other space for it. We're going to move on now to our next point, which is about discovering more of Fae. Now, we talked about already seeing that in the first point with the landmark itself, but the side quest relating to that I thought was really fascinating to do. You'll find a few spirits who have not passed on, and in completing their quest, you'll find that you're able to actually learn more about Fae, because you first want to discover what has happened about, or what has happened to create the lightning bolts, and then to learn more about Fae and the fact that she got into a fight with Thor was one element I thought was really interesting. But the other bit that I think they didn't touch on in terms of Kratos and Atreus was how Fae doing this killed people, right? Like, her actions didn't go without ramifications felt in the world. You hear a few of these spirits talk about, oh, I was drinking, I don't know what happened, and next just a big bang and I'm gone. And I thought that was quite an interesting take on it, where, and it ties in with the overall theme, right? Kratos is constantly trying to stop Atreus in advancing Ragnarok because there are ramifications of war. That, you know, war is not a pretty thing, as we all know, and it has ramifications that can't be undone. So I thought that was really fascinating to see that she was, like I say, I would have loved to have seen Kratos and Atreus talk about it, but seeing that she was doing what she believed was correct in terms of fighting Thor, but it having such an impact on not only the people of the spirits that we're talking to who are now dead, but this space which is now barren, filled with predators and spirits which are just causing damage and destroying the ecosystem, and it almost never recovering. Now, part of that is also Odin's doing, but just showing her as well as such a powerful warrior that you wonder, could she have rivaled Kratos in a sense, right? The fact that she went toe to toe with Thor, yeah, was able to do a lot of damage, and what I'm going to presume it ends in at least a draw because of the lightning bolt. But if you constantly just dig deeper from it, there's a lot that you can take away from the stories, but also put together yourself from this and make your own decisions a bit more about the character who's was such the driving force of the 2018 version, but was also now she's in the dream sequences with Kratos, but present is still felt within our main characters, even though for an entire game we never really met her. There is stuff in the comics as well that tie in. So I just thought really tying in with the whole that losing someone can have, and also getting to know about them, but also again tying in with their overall message, one of their overall messages of just how brutal and bad war can be, and is it worth it, right? So yeah, really enjoyed that one for sure. So I think that is all I really want to talk about. Now, I know that there'll be different interactions with the different AI companions, but as I said, I played through all of this with Atreus in my run through, so I'm not sure what happens when you go back when Atreus has left. But one of the things that I think was fascinating for me was the pacing of releasing this space. Now, I didn't know there was going to be more for you to like. The end game content that they release in this one is really impressive, honestly, for especially for just a single player narrative game to keep you playing more. It was really, really well done. We might touch upon that in another episode. And I know some players who left this and decided to come back to it as well, hearing different stories online. But I and my brother as well, who's playing it, we're playing roughly the same time. Because we'd done all the other side missions as we were going through, decided, oh, we'll do these because there's not that many to do in the other realms. But this one was vastly different in terms of scope and size, right? Hence it having its own episode here. I am curious as to why they chose to do this right near the end of the game. If you just choose to go on the main path after the battle in Vanaheim, you're kind of in the home stretch, roughly, like definitely in the fourth quarter, shall we say. And there's so much to do. Now we can argue, and this is just general open world pacing issues that you find with games where there's a sense of urgency, but yet the characters are going off collecting feathers or what have you. I am curious on why they put this right in that kind of, like I said, the last quarter on such a bigger scope versus much earlier in the game where I felt more players would probably take advantage of it versus last one. Because myself, I was definitely thinking, God, there's so much to do here. I'm kind of wanting to get to the end of the game. But I stayed and finished it. And as we said, now knowing that you couldn't go back to it, I was like, God, maybe I should have just left it. But I do wonder what was the choice behind that versus putting it earlier. Because I feel if you put it earlier, more players might have played through more. But again, as we said, you can go back after completing the game as well. So, yeah, as I said, it's not a huge deal. It's just something that I felt was a little bit odd in terms of when I was playing it, but we're all playing it with different emotions. So I would love to know more behind the choices of that if I could. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope that you've enjoyed this design analysis. If there's stuff that you really enjoyed from this, please put it in the comments down below. Make sure that you do subscribe, whether you'll be listening through podcast or that of YouTube. Like the video, rate the podcast 5 stars. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do so on Twitter, which is @MaxPez, where you're going to see me building out one of my own God of War levels. As I said, a really huge fan of the team's Sony Santa Monica's design style. And if you want to email me, you can do so leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And if you want to support the show and get more level design content, please head over to patreon.com/leveldesignlobby. Thank you all, take care, and I'll catch you all next time.